I'll give you an example. I went to Malawi in 2013. Malawi at the time, and still today, is one of the poorest countries in the world. The president at the time, her name is Joyce Banta. The previous president, he was an economist, and he didn't want to devalue the currency, and he went up against the Europeans. He went up against the Germans, he went up against the English. And what they did to Malawi is they put a trade embargo on Malawi, which crashed this economy, which caused so many problems. And then the new president came, the Europeans supported her, and she devalued the currency. Now, did you hear about this?
No, not in the mainstream
Most
news,
people, most people here that never have heard of this. I never heard about this. Why? Because it's not news worthy for major independent liberal outlets. Why? It's a poor African nation, which is being pummeled by European countries. It doesn't fit their narrative. But when they give aid, now let me ask you a question. Do you believe Europe gives aid to Africa?
No, it says it does on paper, but it doesn't. The aid doesn't go to African countries. It goes to the corrupt political leaders.
Fine. But on a perception point of view, what do most people, what would they say?
They believe that yes, that European countries do give lots of foreign aid to African countries. They would say yes.
And the reality is, the reverse is true. Africa gives aid to Europe. Most people don't know that. I'll prove this to you. If we look at European resources, what do we have? Do we have copper, oil, uranium,
Cobalt.
gold, right? All these things. Fruits, do we have these things? Just down there we have supermarkets. Where's the fruit from? Okay, now, if right now Africa stops giving aid to Europe, says, you're not taking our bananas, our fruits, our oil, our gas, you're not taking any of this. Fine. Europe, your chicken is worth our chicken. Your beef is worth our beef. Okay? One for one like. No currencies involved. What will Europe trade on? What does the UK have? Apples, potatoes? What do they have? Africa has the resources, and that aid is coming to the UK. That aid is coming to Europe. So the thing is,
No, it's interesting. You would classify that as aid.
it is aid. What else is it?
I won't disagree with you in regards to all those things. I already know that, and I agree with you there. But I like the way you've used it as you put it under the banner of aid. Africa.
I didn't. This is what black academics who are working on this. They're trying to, and this is the thing which I was speaking to one of my friends, Dawood, about. He comes to Speaker's Corner sometimes.
I've seen him before.
Yeah, he's a black intellectual. And I said to him, Dawood, where is the black intellectuals of today? Where have they gone? Where's the Malcolm X's of today?
They're still around.
No, they're still around. But are they? Are they pushed to the front? No. What do we have? The people pushed to the front are the people who don't represent the black movement. They don't represent the best, the cream of the crop. What do they actually do? They keep these people at the back.
Yeah,
They try and create a situation. Like, for example, he was telling me, and he's doing some amazing work about, what was considered black in the 60s and 70s. Even Asians, they were considered by the British black. Anybody that was not white was basically black, right? So what do we have now? We basically have a movement in the world, like all across the world, this injustice. And why did I start off this topic of race? It's to do with liberalism again.
And you associate it with Darwinism.
With Darwinism. A liberal, when they're looking for their understanding of the world, they can only go to nature, and their nature, that version is not based upon the understanding of nature involving a god. It's the understanding of nature with no god. And when they look at the world through that Darwinian lens, the naturalistic lens, they would say black people are lower, and there's nobody in the world that can say these tenets of liberalism means that black people are equal to white people. What happened to George Floyd was wrong. Nobody can say that. Liberalism has no mechanism to provide that. All liberals can do is they can give surface level arguments, speak about human rights as if they exist, but human rights from a liberal point of view, they do not exist. They are figment of the imagination. Why? Because if there is no God, then there is no grounding for human rights.
So then how are the laws made in the liberal societies that govern human rights then?
Very good question. They are a remnant of the liberal world order which existed prior to atheism, when liberalism took its grounding for rights in God. So for example, you look at America. America is still a very religious society. However, say in the next 100 years America becomes atheistic, they will still have liberal laws. Sorry, they'll still have human rights. And that's based upon their Christian heritage. Okay? For example, this idea of universal human rights. This is not universal, and it's not something which a state like China accepts. In 2013, there was a document known as document number 9 that was discovered, that was circulating around the CCP circles in China. And that document was about how we need to fight, as the Chinese, we need to fight Western influence, and we need to fight their ideals. And one of the ideals is the Western conception of human rights. Because they don't have that conception. Look what they're doing to their own population.
But they are Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
The Uyghurs in Xinjiang, exactly. The people, the Falun Gong practitioners, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, Hong Kong, look what they're doing. So this idea that you can have the existence of human rights without God, this is simply not true. You need a grounding. Because not only do you need a foundation for human rights, you also need the idea of pain and pleasure. If you don't give people their rights, there is a hereafter that you're going to be accountable.
Well, let me ask you something. In regards to these things that we're talking about, say in the criminal world, capital punishment being banned, would you regard that as being a part of the liberalist political ideology?
Not necessarily, because liberalism can allow for capital punishment.
But the thing is, capital punishment is prevalent to religion. In religion,
not really. You can, for example, and Muhammad Hijab's worked on this. He's worked on treason laws in liberal societies.
Okay.
So it's not the case that a liberal society cannot have capital punishment, because liberal societies did have capital punishment. In fact, liberal societies were even committing genocide.
I know, but that's the point I'm making. These liberal societies, they had capital punishment, but over a period of time, they removed capital punishment. And I'm asking you, do you believe that that was a part of liberalism?
Very good question.
That led to them getting rid of capital
Are you
punishment?
off? Okay, assalamu alaikum, see you later.
Was that part of liberalism? Or was it?
Very good question, Preston. It's not part of liberalism, I believe. It's part of this changing moral zeitgeist that we have in the world today, which is because there is no source of morality.
Sorry, I don't want to stop you because you're making sense, but the changing moral zeitgeist, so that's separate from liberalism.
Yeah, that's the changing whims and desires of society.
So what is that then? Because if
That's in flux. That's in flux. That's just fashionable. Whatever's fashionable.
Okay, so that's not liberalism.
That's not liberalism.
Okay. Oh well, that's one good thing. At least you're not condemning liberalism for doing that.
No, because you can have, like I said, the liberals in the past, they believed in laws which they believed from God, and they did not trust atheists. And today, atheism has hijacked liberalism, right? Now, when it comes to what was I saying about? What was I talking about a second ago? The last thing I said before I forgot.
Because before then I was asking you about capital punishment and how within liberalism.
Yeah, the moral zeitgeist, right? So the shifting moral zeitgeist. You see, we have a lot of changing moral ideas in society. So things that were considered really, really bad in the past are considered fine now. 500 years from now, you'll have totally different morals. But what it is if there is no God, then you cannot say one set of morals is better than another. God is the source of all morality. Yeah. Now, from a Darwinian point of view, and Darwinism and capitalism, they have a history. Yeah. Thomas Malthus, have you heard of him? He was an economist. So he was a capitalist, and he believed in the fact that you have an basically you have an asymmetrical situation where you have a lot of demand and you don't have enough supply. Yeah? And that you have these pressures. And these pressures is what, countries run on and whatever, right? So Thomas Malthus, he was being read by the likes of Darwin. Darwin was inspired by Thomas Malthus, this capitalist, to come up with his idea of natural selection, which again is about pressure, which again is about competition, and capitalism is about competition. Now capitalism essentially is what? Okay, we will get the best out of society if we have an all-out competition. We don't have any state interference. We don't have states coming along and saying, your company is too big, we have to break it up. That's what communism does. So, might is right. Capitalism allows that. Darwinism was directly inspired. Darwin was directly inspired. His theory of natural selection was directly inspired by capitalist ideals. And when it took off, there was a movement that Darwin did not head, but he led to that movement. That movement was known as social Darwinism. Social Darwinism. Social Darwinism was the idea that the difference between the genders, the difference between the races, the difference between poor and weak nations, the difference between the rich and the oppressed, this is all part and parcel of nature, and we shouldn't interfere in this because it impedes the progress of mankind. And this is something, again, that unless you have a belief in something beyond nature, you cannot challenge. So these things are linked. I know you're probably still, not totally convinced about how some of these things are linked.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm not here to fly the flag for liberalism. I was always fascinated by what you or Mohammed Hijab was saying against liberalism. So I thought,
do you see where you're coming from?
I find it fascinating from what you've said, correlating liberalism with atheism and nihilism. And as a Muslim, I can then see why you naturally would be against liberalism, especially when you then look within liberalism and you talked about Darwinism, which is not based on God, but he was actually religious, Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin believed in God, but he did not believe God interfered with the world. So he believed everything was naturalistic. When he published The Origin of Species, he believed in God, but he was a deist. He didn't believe in revelation. When the last 10 years of his life came, he became an agnostic because of the problem of evil and suffering. Now, what's very important is the way that people defend him and defend his racism is they say, well, he was racist because everyone around him was racist, so, But the thing is, look, he wasn't racist because people around him were racist. His views were actually better than the people around him. For example, he was against slavery, but other people around him were pro-slavery. His views on race were dictated by his theory. It wasn't just the case that society is racist, so he was racist. Yeah? And I truly believe if you look at atheists today, they jump on the bandwagon of Black Lives Matter or things like this, and Darwinists, they speak as if there's no history, that they don't have a bad history. They need to recognize if race is a hot topic and it's an issue which needs to be dealt with, then the root of the issue is also their worldview, their Darwinian worldview. Have you heard of Yuval Noah Harari?
Yuval Noah Harari, no.
He's a evolutionary historian. He's written a famous book called Sapiens. It's a very famous book. In that book, and you can find it in any bookstore, it's very, very popular. Bill Gates, Barack Obama, a lot of people have spoken about it. In that book, he says, social Darwinism, the racist element of Darwinism, it was being published by the most prestigious universities in the Western world. What put a nail in his grave was not science or academia, was what Hitler did with it. It was the sociological impact of Hitler and what he did, which led people to walk away from social Darwinism. It wasn't the fact that they found something new scientifically. Hence why it's an elephant in the room even today.
So then you would probably think Muslims who have no problem with evolution and believe it's all being done by Allah, that's an oxymoron?
Okay, that's a very good question. It depends. It depends.
The reason I ask is because I've come across, not many, most Muslims, they don't co-sign or support evolution or anything, but I have come across the odd Muslim who will say yes, but it's Allah that's
so this is a wide topic. I'll give you a few.
I mean, I don't want to digress.
No, but it's a good question. It's a very good question. What I would say is this: if a Muslim does believe that evolution is God-directed, they're not really a Darwinist. Because a Darwinist would say natural selection is the blind driving force, not God. So they're not technically a Darwinist, they're an evolutionist. An evolutionist cannot be a Darwinist, so it doesn't have to be a Darwinist. And then it depends what type of evolutionists they are. They could be a neo-Lamarckian, natural genetic engineering, or whatever. They could be a different models. At the same time, as a Muslim, there are some parts of the Darwinian story of the tree of life, say, that we can't accept, right? That are very, very problematic theologically. So even if a Muslim says, yeah, we can accept this, we can accept that, we still believe, for example, that the Adamic creation was miraculous. How exactly it was miraculous, people can debate. But I'll give you an example. If you go up to any person in the world who studies biology, and you tell them, can a virgin give birth? What would they say?
No, in the medical world, no, it's not possible.
Impossible.
It's not possible.
They'll laugh at it. But as a Muslim, I believe a virgin did give birth, which is Mary. Why do I believe that? Because God created the system where a man and a woman come together to have a child, and God can create a child with or without that system because He created the system. So in the Quran, God says, if when He wills a thing, He says be and it is. So the creation of Jesus, if me and you, we were observers and we went around London and we got the best scientists and we got into a time machine and we went back to Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, and all of the village of Bethlehem was frozen, and we took out, the scientists took out the DNA of all the people.
Okay.
They would take out the DNA of baby Jesus, and they would say, looking at all the genomes, they would say the closest match to being the mother is who? They'll say it's Mary, genetically. Who's the closest in terms of being a father, genetically? They would say it's somebody in Mary's family, or it's this other guy. They will not accept it's a virgin birth, because they only believe in cause and effect. They don't believe in the supernatural world.
That goes into the realm of metaphysics,
right? But we as Muslims, regardless of the whole world coming together and saying a virgin birth is not possible, we will say it is possible because God created the scientific, the laws of nature, and God can change them, right? So that's why the creation, and interestingly, God says the similitude of Adam is like Jesus. They both had some form of a miraculous origin. Now, that's why we as Muslims, we have our worldview, and we will never budge on that worldview regardless of how people think or perceive of us, because we believe our worldview to be true and we have evidence for it. And this is why, coming back to your original question about liberalism, I would never accept liberalism because I will say Islam is a complete package, a complete system, and I cannot accept being a partial Muslim. I believe Islam to be true, so I'll be a complete Muslim.
Okay, well, that was it. I was just keen to know why are you always against liberalism, but now you've explained it. It makes sense. I can't disagree with your worldview if you're a Muslim and you're following Islam, or you're a Christian, because I see certain Christians doing it here as well, speaking out against liberalism. Yeah, it makes sense.
Have you ever read the Quran?
I tried reading it. It's not easy. I've actually spent more time reading hadiths than the Quran. The Quran's not easy to read.
I'll give you a challenge, right? Thing is, me and you, on my YouTube channel, I have a live stream that I do. We both jump on the live stream, maybe once a month, twice a month, and we both just read the Quran, and we can discuss it.
Yeah, I don't mind. I do that here sometimes with some Muslims. Your channel is
Darwinian Delusions.
You changed it. Darwinian Delusions.
I'm changing it, yeah.
Darwinian Delusions.
Give me your number.
I'll give you my YouTube. No, I know your YouTube channel now.
Yeah, are you on WhatsApp?
No.
It's alright, I'll give you a call.
When's your next show?
I do it regularly, I can do it anytime. Just give me your number and then I'll liaise with you and set it up.
I'll come on your show. I'll let you know. My
Do you want to give you an email instead?
email, yeah, because that's the name that I use online.
There you go. Just
Oh yeah,
no problem. You could just come here behind Preston and we could speak. What's your name?
Arthur.